Good evening, Mr. Bond fans. As you are probably aware, we are currently without an incumbent cinematic James Bond actor, which means that it's probably only natural, really, that one of the hottest topics of conversation amongst the fandom right now is who is going to replace Daniel Craig to become the 7th official actor to play 007 in the Eon film series. And it turns out that these days all you need to do is put a handsome man in a tuxedo and walk him down a red carpet, and then the very next day the tabloids will be speculating on what the odds are that said actor will be James Bond. I certainly get asked the question a lot, like, what do you think of so-and-so for Bond? So I figured that I would make a video running through what I would consider to be most of the most talked about potential Bond actors, and give my thoughts, rounding off with a thumbs up or a thumbs down for each actor. Or actually, this is a Bond channel, I should probably think of something a bit more Bond specific for my rating system. Empty martini or full martini? Deflated hover gondola or fully buoyant hover gondola? Slazenger 1 or Penfold Hearts? How deep can I go with these references? My thumbs up, thumbs down score will be based on two things. First of all, my own feelings about whatever actor I'm talking about, and second, how likely I think it would be that they could potentially take on the role. Like, some of the actors that we're going to be talking about, I think are just a little bit too old to be taking on the role right now, or some are maybe a bit too famous, a bit too expensive. So that's the criteria that I'm going to be talking about for each of these candidates. And as I say, I think that I have assembled pretty much all of the most talked about potential Bond actors here. There are some that might be missing who are in the conversation, and that is because that, well, to be honest, I only really wanted to talk about actors that I have some familiarity with their work, so that I can make an informed decision about whether or not I think they could be a potential Bond actor. I feel like so much of the speculation that you see in the tabloids tends to be based on like a still of someone on a red carpet, and it's like, yeah, he might look handsome in a tuxedo, but there is a bit more criteria than that to actually play James Bond. Just for starters, you have to know how to raise a single eyebrow. So if there are any actors that aren't on this list that you think should be, please do let me know in the comments section below, because I would like to do a follow-up video, to be honest, if there are more candidates to seek out for potential Bond discussion. I've got quite a list here, so we'll see how we go. But yes, if there are any like really blatant ones missing from this list, please do let me know in the comment section below, and hopefully in the future I'll have another video like this where I can talk about those people. So I'm going to start this off by talking about some of, I think, the more high-profile Bond candidates. Starting with the man who is probably the single most talked about Bond candidate of them all. The man who came second place to Daniel Craig back in 2005 when they were making Casino Royale, and that man is, of course, Mr. Henry Cavill. I've heard him referred to in the past as like a man kind of born to play James Bond, and I think that he has a lot in common with Pierce Brosnan in a lot of ways. Like, I think he is, if you asked most people to close their eyes and picture what James Bond looks like, they would probably imagine someone who looked an awful lot like him, if you're not imagining Sean Connery. Or Roger Moore in my instance. I'm gonna come out with it right now. I've never been a huge fan of the idea of Henry Cavill being James Bond, precisely because I think maybe he is a little bit too perfect. But I think that the problem for Cavill now is that his star profile is probably just a bit too high. Oftentimes you see that whenever a new Bond is announced, they're often like established actors. They've had careers. They might even, like Roger Moore and Pierce Brosnan, have had regular roles on TV and been known for that, but they're often kind of, they're not already in blockbuster, they're not already blockbuster stars, and I feel like with Henry Cavill, he very much is, like I say, he's been in all of these Superman films, he was in Mission Impossible, he's got this Argyle thing coming out, which is supposed to be like a spy film, Matthew Vaughn's take on kind of like a James Bond kind of character. And then he is The Witcher as well, so he's like the lead role in a TV show. I feel like if they had have got him like in 2005 at the very relatively start of his career, I mean, what had he done? He'd done a few films, maybe a little bit of TV, but not that much. He would have been probably more of an unknown than, well, Daniel Craig was at the time if they'd have gone with him then. This is, of course, assuming that they will follow a formula similar to what they have done in the past. Who knows? Maybe now they would just decide, you know what, we're just going to go blockbuster star status right from the off. Let's get Henry Cavill. They might well decide to do that. However, I feel like they're still going to want to get an actor who is dare I say, cheaper than maybe Henry Cavill would be now. There's a tradition that the Bond actor's salary gets raised, you know, film on film, so I don't know if Henry Cavill were to do, let's say, 5, what they would have to be paying him by the end of that. For me personally, I just think that Cavill would be a little bit too predictable. I feel like, you know, I've seen The Man from U.N.C.L.E., I know what kind of Bond he would do, and I think that I would prefer to have something a little bit more surprising. I would prefer to be introduced to an actor who I'm maybe less familiar with from other big blockbuster parts. So I'm sorry, Henry Cavill, but you are getting the first spilled martini of the list. Okay, next up we have Aidan Turner, who is, I would probably say, like, second or third, like, one of the most talked about potential Bond candidates. He's 38 at the moment. He's had big, like, roles in big films, so he's been in the Hobbit films, for instance. I still don't think he is quite at a level of stardom that Henry Cavill is, though. I know that he was obviously the lead in Poldark. I think he could still be at a point in his career where he's just kind of waiting for that, like, lead kind of breakout blockbuster role. I've seen him in The Hobbits, I've seen him in clips of Poldark, I never watched that whole thing, and I've seen him in many an interview. But specifically, he was in a mini-series, an adaptation of an Agatha Christie story, and Then There Were None, which was, I think, 2015, I think it was like on BBC around Christmas time. It was a really nice series, I really like murder mystery kind of stuff like that. And in that, he just, like, looked, I think it's set in, like, the 20s or 30s or something, but he had a tuxedo on, he had the hair done, he looked really the part. I think he's a very talented actor, and I think that he has, like, his features are quite, I don't know how to describe it other than just, like, sharp, like, kind of wolf-like. I feel like he would be a Timothy Dalton-esque Bond, maybe a bit of, like, a harder edged, but with that kind of more classic look. So Aidan Turner actually gets a full martini glass from me. I think that he could be really great. He's 38 now, so I think that they would have to kind of hurry up if they want to make the most of having him. But yeah, I think he would be a very solid Bond. And we come to another of the most talked about candidates, Mr. Idris Elba, who I feel like I have seen in so much. He's obviously one of the characters in, like, the Thor films, Avengers. What else has he been in? Prometheus, yeah, Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance, Fast and Furious, The Suicide Squad. He's been in so much, and obviously Luther, his BBC series, which I only watched because people were telling me, like, how great an actor he is, and you really need to see Luther. A little bit of an aside here, I didn't actually think he was very good in the first series of Luther. I thought that he was a bit hammy and over the top, and I appreciate that a lot of that might be directing choices as well as acting choices, but I persevered with that, and by the, like, second, third, like, fourth series, I thought he was brilliant. I thought he was a really phenomenal lead in that series. I feel like he might win the award for, like, the longest period of being talked about. Like, I feel like we've experienced an entire era of his Bond, and it never even happened. He's just been talked about so much and been in the conversation for so long. And as a result, he is now just, I think, too old. Like, he's 49 years old, and obviously he looks great, he seems really fit, but particularly with the rate that we're getting the films now, assuming that they're gonna still be coming, like, every, like, 3 or 4 years, you're not gonna get that many films out of him. Like, people do love to bring up the fact that Roger Moore was, like, 112 or something when he was cast as Bond, but that was a different time. Like, they got through, like, what, 7 films in 14 years? It's changed. I think that ideally you do want someone in their 30s, preferably mid-30s. Hey, I'm coming up to my mid-30s. So with regret, Idris, it is gonna be a spilled martini. You know, with him, it's always been a kind of a case of, like, if the film was released tomorrow, if they already had a film with him and it was in the can and we could just go to the cinema and see it tomorrow, brilliant. But tabloids and stuff, they never really take into account that, you know, it takes, like, about 3 years from, like, actually writing the thing to it being released, so yeah. I think I have similar sentiments about Tom Hardy as well. I feel like he has been talked about for ages. I feel like Inception was the first time that I kind of started hearing his name be bandied around, and he played a really cool British character action star in that, and He would look brilliant again, seen in many films, like Mad Max, Fury Road, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Dark Knight, obviously. And then he's in the Venom films as well, and he is 44 now, so again, I feel like he might just be a little bit too old to take it on if they did want to go for a 4 or 5 picture deal like they have done in the past. He's also probably just a bit too known for other things right now. I mean, he's Mad Max, Bane, Venom. Those are some fairly iconic characters that he has played, and I feel like his stardom is potentially just a bit too high for James Bond right now. So it's another reluctant one, but this martini is also spilled. Richard Madden is an actor who's kind of been on my, high up on my list of potential Bond candidates for some time. He is 35 years old. I think most people will probably still know him from, Game of Thrones. I know that he was in a Marvel film, The Eternals, yeah. And when that was first announced, I was like, no, Richard, you can't go too high profile with your career. You need to stay at a level where you might be, where they might be able to afford you as James Bond. I don't keep up with the Marvel films very much. I haven't seen that film, but I hear that it didn't do very well, so maybe that wouldn't be too much of a problem. I think it was really when he was in Bodyguard, which was a series on the BBC here, that people really started to sort of like, oh, maybe he could be James Bond, because it was set in contemporary times and he was playing this kind of action role. And yeah, I think he is a great actor. I think he could do probably a Pierce Brosnan type Bond, but with maybe just a bit more of an edge to him. That's the kind of thing I think we'd get, but really, I don't know. And that's kind of fun when it comes to prospective Bond actors, I think. Like, I've seen a lot of his stuff, but I still feel like there's enough variety in his work so far that I can't necessarily just, pigeonhole exactly how he'd be as Bond. And so that, to me, is exciting, and that's why he gets a full martini. And I have similar sentiments to echo for James Norton, who is another actor who's been relatively high on my prospective list for some time. I think ever since I saw Happy Valley, which was another really great BBC series here, and he plays a very violent, very unpleasant character in that thing. But I think he's a really great actor, and I've seen him in a few other things since then. And again, just on a stardom level career, I feel like he's known enough, but not blockbuster movie star, that he could be a very realistic choice for them. Though I think the thing that might kind of hold him back a little bit is that I could see him being a very similar to Daniel Craig Bond, and maybe they would just want to try and repeat that formula. Daniel Craig has obviously been hugely successful, but from what I have seen of James Norton's work, I think he would continue on in that Daniel Craig tradition of performance, which, totally fine. As I say, it's been very profitable, but maybe they would want a bit of a change of pace, I don't know. Regardless of that though, James Norton gets a full martini glass from me. Next up is Henry Golding, an actor who I suffered through film called, what was it called? Snake Eyes. Yeah, G.I. Joe prequel something. I suffered through that thing because his name was coming up on these prospective Bond lists, and I'd only seen him in romantic comedies. And I was like, oh, he's in an action film. Great, I'll check that out. It's a mistake. Yes, an actor who I have seen previously in Crazy Rich Asians, Last Christmas he was in. He's 35 years old, and I think if they did want to go for if they just decided right out the gate, okay, we're doing Roger Moore, again, we're doing a lighter end of Pierce Brosnan, and again, I think he could be really perfect. I think he has great comedic timing. I think that he's very likable and charming. I think he can, physically do the action. That was my main takeaway from watching Snake Eyes, that, oh, what do you know? He can throw a punch and shoot a gun or whatever. Does he shoot a gun in that? He's a ninja, isn't he? Anyway, I do think that he has a lot of screen charisma, and I think that, as I say, if they did want to go with a bit of a lighter Bond, a little bit of a more jokey Bond, I think he'd be really good at that. So, Henry Golding is getting a full martini stamp of approval from me. Oh, Tom Hiddleston. Next to, I think, Idris Elba in terms of just, how long have people been talking about him as a prospective Bond? And I felt like a lot of that came through. He did The Night Manager, was it called? Yeah, The Night Manager. Which was kind of espionage-y, and I think people saw that, and really, there is, a real correlation between a lot of these actors, and if you are on a BBC drama series where you wear a suit and get involved in a bit of action, tabloids are going to start talking about you. Obviously, he's low-key, he's very deep into the Marvel universe now, so I feel like maybe he's just a bit too high-profile a star. He's also 41, so he's not necessarily too old for it, but he's just, like I say, I still think that 30s is kind of like the sweet spot for a new Bond. Some of the stories that came out about him over the years about, like, you know, obviously made up nonsense about, like, how his relationship with Taylor Swift cost him the role of James Bond, and it was like, they weren't even recasting then, and I sincerely doubt that they would not cast someone because of who they were dating. I mean, they'd probably get her to do the theme song, in all honesty. They'd see that as a 2-for-1 offer. So for being just a little bit too high profile, Tom Hiddleston is getting a spilled martini glass. Riz Ahmed is someone who I would never have really thought about as James Bond, and then when he's been popping up on lists and stuff, and I'm kind of like, oh, actually, yeah, I could probably see that. He's an actor who I've seen in plenty of stuff, like Four Lions, Star Wars, and I think he's a brilliant actor. I think he's really, really good. I think he's really, like, very handsome looking in a tuxedo. I kind of like that he's a little bit more svelte, like he's not got that Craig physique, but that could work too. I think ultimately I am going to give him a full martini glass, but it's a full martini glass that's maybe had like a sip. Michael Fassbender, long talked about. I feel like you don't really see his name in the conversation all that much, and I think a part of that is kind of reflected by, like, he's 45 now, so he's probably just a little bit too old for it now. I really like Michael Fassbender. If they'd have got him 10 years ago, if you've seen X-Men First Class, you will have seen that scene where he goes Nazi hunting, and there's a scene in like a tavern, and he is just brilliant in that scene. I think he's terrific in all of those X-Men films. I really like X-Men, and I think he's a fantastic Magneto. I also really like him in, like, Prometheus and Alien Covenant, where he plays the android David. I think he's really good in that. I think he's just a really solid actor. Like, if he's in a film, I will get excited about it, because I think he's just phenomenal. I think he could have been a brilliant Bond. Like, quite honestly, it's gonna pain me that I'm giving him an empty martini glass, a spilled martini glass, because I really do think he could have been phenomenal. He's probably my the one on this list that I'm most maybe I would have really liked to have seen him. You know, if Craig had packed it in after Skyfall, maybe I would have quite liked to have seen Michael Fassbender in a few of them. Nicholas Hoult is an actor similar to Riz Ahmed for me, where I'd never even considered them, like, to be perfectly honest. And then once I saw his name on a list, or someone might have mentioned it on a live stream to me, like, oh, what about Nicholas Hoult? And it suddenly clicked, and I was like, yes, that's perfect. And the filmography he has, my god. About a Boy, A Single Man, he was in a bunch of those X-Men films. He was in Clash of the Titans, Mad Max Fury Road, he was in The Favourite. He has had a brilliant career so far, quite accomplished for someone, you know, relatively, like, he's at the lower end of his 30s. He obviously had a recurring role in the X-Men films, he played Beast in a bunch of those, but I don't feel like that stuck on him like Loki has with Tom Hiddleston, for instance. I think Nicholas Hoult is a really exciting actor. I think he's got a great look if they wanted to go for... I would just be really interested because he's got such a varied career and I've seen him do so much different stuff. I don't know what his Bond would be like, and that would be really cool. But he has that look of just like proper classic 50s kind of Bond. So I think he would be a very exciting, interesting choice, and one of the more likely ones on this list, I think. It's a very full martini for him. And sticking on the younger end of the spectrum, we have Tom Holland, who is 26. My god, he's that young. An actor who recently kind of mentioned that he pitched his own idea for what his James Bond film would be, and it sounded awful. It was basically... you wouldn't realize it was a James Bond film until the last few minutes when he'd be given the title, the code name of James Bond 007, and that was just, I'm not surprised that I'm sure it was thank you, Tom, yes, we are very interested in your ideas. Put the phone on the hook. Obviously, he is Spider-Man. So I think he's very much attached to that part, and I think, quite frankly, I think he would be too expensive. I think he's too well known. I think that, yeah, we often talk about, you know, Bond after the Daniel Craig era needs to make more of an attempt at trying to appeal to a younger audience, because it has kind of skewed a bit older with Craig, and he'd be a way of doing that. He has a very loyal, very young fan base, but I think he's too big of a star for right now. So it is a spilled martini glass for Tom Holland. Cillian Murphy, similar to Michael Fassbender, he is someone who I think could have been great, you know, 10 years ago or whatever, but he's 46 now. I feel like he's probably just a bit too old for it. I think he's a phenomenal actor. I really like Cillian Murphy. I've seen most of his films, and again, an actor who I get excited about if he's in a film. I will specifically go to see something if I know that he is in it. That being said, it's an empty martini glass. Sorry, Cillian. Dev Patel next, another Skins alumni. I don't know if anyone outside of the UK will even remember that series anymore, but him and Nicholas Hoult were in it together. It was quite popular for the years that they were in it. Anyway, so like Nicholas Hoult, he is 32 years old. I have seen a good many of his films, including, you know, The Best Exotic, Marigold Hotel, with Judi Dench, of course, Slumdog Millionaire, obviously, Last Airbender, Chappie, Lion. I think he's a really fantastic actor, and again, I don't think that he's a blockbuster star yet, but he is the kind of actor that people get excited about when he's in something. Again, I would have no idea what to expect from his version of James Bond, and, perfect age. I think he's at a perfect point in his career. I think he's got a really great look, so it's a full martini glass from me. Luke Evans, who is, you know what, despite being in a lot of blockbusters, I very much feel like he's in The Hobbit, Fast and the Furious kind of stuff. I do think of him as a Hollywood leading man kind of thing. I don't know if he's necessarily terribly attached to one particular role in the public eye. Maybe he is. I don't think I've not seen like a couple of the Fast and the Furious films. I don't know if people just see him and think, oh, he's that guy from those films. Got a really kind of handsomely craggy face. He's got that kind of Daniel Craig sort of cragginess to him that I think is really good. At 43, potentially just a little bit too old for the role. But hey, he did release an album in 2019 and he sang in Beauty and the Beast. Maybe he could be the first Bond to ever sing his own theme songs. But sadly, it is going to have to be an empty martini glass for Luke Evans. Jamie Bell, similar to Nicholas Hoult, this is another one that I would never have considered. I don't know if I just associate them too much with their childhood roles, like Nicholas Hoult in About a Boy, Jamie Bell in Billy Elliot, obviously. But he's 36 years old, and I think that, he was one of those, like Nicholas Hoult, where as soon as someone mentioned it, I was like, yes, that would be brilliant. Again, I feel like he's had quite a prolific career. I mean, King Kong, Jumper, Fantastic Four, he was in that. He was in Rocket Man. Yeah, I remember that. Along with Richard Madden. Snowpiercer, The Adventures of Tintin. I feel like he's been on the cusp of getting these, if Tintin had become a series, if the Fantastic Four, his version, had become a series, maybe he would have been too known, too recognized in those parts. I mean, he's behind a lot of CGI, so maybe it wouldn't have made a blind bit of difference. But I think he's a really solid actor at pretty much just the right age for it, so he gets a full martini glass from me. Jamie Dornan, Christian Grey himself, yes. He's 40 years old, and he has had, I mainly know him from, TV stuff, I think. Yeah, The Fall, that's, the main thing that I kind of know him from, and he was brilliant in that with Gillian Anderson. Despite the Christian Grey casting, I feel like he is still waiting for that iconic cinematic role, and I think he could nail it. I think he's a brilliant actor. Rege-Jean Page. Now, he is someone who I did have to watch a few Bridgerton clips. Bridgerton is not my kind of series, but people were talking about him, so I obviously had to go and see some of his stuff. I think I would maybe need to see a bit more of his work before I thought, maybe he could be a potential Bond. I don't know, it's tough to tell when it's costume drama kind of thing, and he's I don't know, he's a very handsome man, but he's very pretty, and I don't know if I would need to see him in a bit of a kind of a grittier kind of role to imagine him playing James Bond. Like, I know he's going to be in The Grey Man, which is an action thriller coming up, and maybe he'll get something like that in that film. At 34 years old, he's a good age to be considered, but I've just not seen enough of his work to really have a gauge on page, so it is a spilled martini glass for me. Josh O'Connor. Now, this is an actor kind of similar in ways to Rege-Jean Page, where I've not seen him in a lot of like action stuff or thriller stuff, but I have seen enough of his work to know that I think he's a fantastic actor. And I think if they really wanted to go a bit more serious and tap into some of that Ian Fleming, what's the word I'm looking for? Darkness, moodiness that his James Bond had, the internal turmoil, perhaps. I think that he conveys that really well. I've seen him in, like, The Crown and God's Own Country, specifically, are two things that I was just kind of blown away by him. I think that he's a really, really good actor. It'd be interesting to see if he could kind of, pull off the action movie lead. Like, I don't know if he'd have to buff up a bit for it or whatever, but I think he's got that, again, like, similar to Nicholas Hoult in a way. I think he has that. If they did ever go and do a period piece Bond, he would fit right in like with a 1950s aesthetic. I think he's got a really great look. So on that basis alone, I'm going to give Josh O'Connor a full martini glass. Sam Heughan, who I think is probably, maybe I should have included him a bit higher up this list, because he is a name that I see crop up an awful lot. He's 42 years old, and I can't kind of believe that. He looks like 10 years younger. It stuns me, really. I've had to seek out some of this guy's work. I've had to see clips of, like, Outlander and stuff. The Spy Who Dumped Me, where he played a very James Bondian kind of part, even, like, doing an eyebrow raise. And I think he would really look the part. Like, I think he looks absolutely perfect. He's so handsome in the tuxedo. He looks great, but he still has that kind of harder edge to him. There is something a little bit chiseled about him in that kind of Sean Connery way, and he is obviously Scottish, so that'd be a return to tradition. Based on what I have seen, I think he would be fairly phenomenal, and maybe at 42 they would need to jump on him like immediately to secure him if they are going to be doing, like, 15-year-long tenures. So yes, he definitely gets a full martini glass from me. Jonathan Bailey, another Bridgerton star whose name crops up quite a bit. Again, I had to, like, seek out, clips from Bridgerton to kind of, and again, I have a really hard time judging from that series. I think I'd need to see him in something a little bit more, where he plays a little bit harder, a character, maybe, to get a judge on that. It's just, yeah. Is this just going to be a recurring thing in Bridgerton now? Every year we're going to have some new bloke who looks good in formal wear, so the tabloids are just going to go crazy. As with Rege-Jean Page, I just need to see a bit more of their work, but based on what I have seen now, it is an empty martini glass from me. Robert Pattinson, I'm surprised to see his name still in the pool, because I think he's very much a successful Batman at this point, and I don't think that you can be Batman and James Bond at the same time. That being said, I think he's a fantastic actor. If they had have secured him, I'm sure he would have been brilliant, but just based on where he's at in his career at the moment, I don't think he could be James Bond, so it is an empty martini glass for Robert Pattinson. Harris Dickinson, who you might know from The King's Man, if you've been keeping up with that series. I thought he was pretty good in that, if a little dry. He's definitely at the younger end of the scale as well. He's 25 years old. I feel like that might make him a little too young for the part. It depends on where they wanted to go with it. Maybe they would go for a younger Bond, maybe do another origin type story again. I think he's very much one to keep an eye on. For the time being, though, it is just gonna be an empty martini glass from me. And finally, we come to Harry Styles. No. Just no. No, I'm kidding. Stay with me. So, I know that just even mentioning his name is going to rile up a few people. But I think, you know, I've seen him in Dunkirk. That's all I can kind of go off. I thought he was pretty good in that, and I think that he has a sharpness to his features that would kind of work as James Bond. I do think that he has, like, quite piercing eyes, which would work as James Bond. He's 28 years old, so maybe just a little bit too young, and obviously he's Harry Styles, he's in one of the biggest bands on the planet. He is probably far too well-known and too expensive for it. Who knows? He's continuing to act, so maybe he'll surprise us all. Maybe he'll be like a Lady Gaga kind of figure and make that transition or that co-career thing, music and acting at the same time. But similar to the Bridgerton guys, I feel like I just need to see a little bit more of their work. And as a result of that, Harry Styles rounds off this list with an empty martini glass. Oof, okay, that was a lot. That was a lot of potential Bonds. It's only really when you start listing them all out that you realize just how many there are. And as I say, like, I think I've picked out some of the more high-profile candidates with this list. I'm sure that there are still many out there that I didn't cover, who people are going to be typing in the comments. As I say, please do let me know if your favorite, or there's a really obvious one that you feel like I didn't talk about on this list. Please do let me know in the comment section below, as well as your thoughts on all of these actors. You know, if there's any favorites. Actually, let me know your top 3. I'll let you know my top 3. Okay, I think for me, Nicholas Hoult is up there. He's fairly the top for me right now. Then I think Josh O'Connor, if that's not too weird a choice, but I think, you know, maybe I'm just blinded by the sight of him in a safari suit in The Crown in that one episode, and I was just like, yes, that's my Bond. And third, I'm gonna go James Norton. I'm gonna go, yeah, Nicholas Hoult, Josh O'Connor, James Norton. Those would be my top 3 Bond contenders. Do let me know your top 3 in the comment section below. And also below you can find links to my various social media pages, including my Facebook page, Twitter page, Instagram page, Letterboxd page, and my Patreon page for those of you who want to go one extra step in supporting this channel. Please also consider clicking the subscribe button and the Mrs. Bell notification button to stay super up to date on future video uploads that I make on this channel. And with all that being said, and until next time, Bond fans, so long for now.